I don't know if I believe this or not, but I've had people tell me that one of the reasons that America loves Steph Curry so much is not just because of what a great player he is, which of course he is, not just because of what a genuine and excellent person he seems to be, which he 100% does, but also because he does it all while not being that physically imposing. He's not huge. He's not muscular like LeBron James looks like he is a superhero, right? LeBron James looks like he is directly out of a Marvel comic. And there's nothing relatable about that for the rest of us. None of us can have any idea what it would be like to be 6'9", 260 pounds of lean, chiseled muscle. And also, by the way, end-to-end be the fastest player on the court. Like that's just a 1 in a million gift athletically, which he has maximized. I'm not diminishing him in any way. But Steph Curry looks like someone that you might run into if you're going out to play West 3rd Street, or if you're going to play, at some gym somewhere, some YMCA, you're going to play. There'll be a lot of guys who are built just like him. And this one happens to be redefining basketball as we know it. So let's start with a psychological piece of this. And many of you may not know this, but Bubba, before his, now legendary run as a radio producer, Bubba was a very esteemed leader and professor in the worlds of psychoanalysis, written several books on the subject. So you understand, the psyche of people better than most people do. Or do you still have a chair at Harvard? Or do you still have a chair, endowed chair at Harvard in psychology?
Yeah, I had to give it up.
You had to give that up.
Yeah,
you had to give it a chair
He's
away.
still on the board, though.
Yeah. You no longer have that chair.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, the question is, do you buy into the theory that Steph's lack of sort of imposing stature is part of the reason people love him so much?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think, like you said, it's all about the relatability, because when people are watching, the average American looks far more like Steph and his build than they look like LeBron. So if you're watching Steph play and you're watching him out there, you're like, hey, he kind of looks like me. I can do that. So you're out there and you're shooting with your friends. You're not going to be able to recreate anything LeBron can do. There's literally no way you can do anything he can do. But you can practice and say, hey, I'm going to practice and be like Steph. So I think it makes perfect sense for people who are trying to relate and be like those people. So if you're out there, hey, there's plenty of people that look like Jalen Brunson. Again, very few people look like LeBron. But if you're out there, like you said, on the ball courts in New York, there's hundreds of people that probably look like Jalen Brunson out there. And those people can relate to Jalen Brunson. But no one out there is going to look like LeBron.
I wonder if that's part of the reason why people are taking to him in the way they are. I mean, Jalen Brunson, I live here in New York. I've spent most of my life here. He has taken over this town in a way that very few athletes ever have before. And I do wonder if that is part of it, that people look at him and they say, my God, look at what he's doing at his size. Like what he's doing, what Anthony Edwards is doing doesn't seem as shocking when you look at him relative to what Jalen Brunson is doing at his size. Jalen Brunson looks like that guy that if you're playing at the Y, if he dunks, you're stunned. You're like, wait a minute, that guy can dunk? Steph, the same thing. Like, Steph dunks. I mean, he has dunked like a handful of times. And every time you're like, wait a minute, he can dunk? Like he doesn't look like he could dunk a basketball, and yet he is by far the most dominant player on the floor.
Yeah, I think even that's almost some of the things too, with the relatability too, with whether it's Brunson or Curry. A lot of their stuff are things that, and it's not fully realistic, but it's stuff that people watching at home think that they can practice and get to be able to do. When you watch LeBron, again, the stuff he's going to dunk and do, you're not going to be able to think you can do that. But if I'm sitting at home and I'm a young kid and I'm watching Curry throw up all these different threes, I'm going to say, hey, let's go down to the court and practice threes. I can maybe one day I can get to be good enough to do that. But if I see LeBron do a 360, windmill, all right, well, I have no chance of doing that. But when you see Jalen Brunson take over and do a nice floater in the lane to win the game, all right, well, let me practice that. Like the stuff they're doing, even though it's not fully realistic because they're just so skilled, but either way, it came from years and years and years of practice. And if you have that same build, maybe one day you can do that as well.
Let me add another psychological layer to this, Cam, and that is that I think people see Steph Curry and see Jalen Brunson, and they assume because of what their stature looks like when juxtaposed with all the other players, that they're actually much smaller than they are. So I'll give you one of the things that I've learned. I've just been blessed in my entire adult life. I've spent my entire career around professional athletes. I covered the sports, particularly football and basketball, where all of the people involved are generally freakishly large. I mean, stunningly large. And I hear this from people. In fact, I would get it all the time. Bubba, you've been around me a lot. The most common thing people would say when they met me while I was doing Mike and Mike, it doesn't happen so much anymore because that's a long time ago. But when I sat next to Mike every single day for 18 years, and people would, the most common, what is the most frequent thing you would hear people say to me when they met me?
Wow, you're taller than I thought you'd be.
You're exactly right. You're way bigger than I thought you were. Because people forget that these people are freakishly large.
I mean, Golick was unbelievable.
He was a defensive tackle in the NFL. He's a huge man.
Chris Canty's like 6'8" or something.
Chris Canty is... If you ran into Chris Canty in the street, you wouldn't believe a person could look like that.
Yeah,
he's huge.
It's ridiculous.
Like Big Perk, who's here today. Stace said to me one time she saw Big Perk. Perk loves my wife. He came over, gave her a hug. She's like, I was enveloped completely. I disappeared from sight. You don't realize how huge these guys are. And if you've never been around them, there's no reason you would realize it because they all look that way on television. So you don't have a real sense. If you've never sat really close to the court in a basketball game, you don't realize just how big everybody is. So as a consequence, you see Jalen Brunson out there doing this and you're like, look at him. He looks like he's 5'7". You know what I mean? Like he's not Muggsy Bogues. He's not Spud Webb. But when compared to when you put him next to Miles Turner, they don't look like they should be playing against each other, right? They wouldn't be if this was wrestling, they wouldn't be in the same weight class. Like he shouldn't be competing against someone that big and strong. And so I think that all adds to it. I think all those things contribute to why he has just become an icon. It is delightful to watch how much people have taken to him, knowing what a likable person he is. I don't know him well, but I know some people who do know him very well. The book on him that I've gotten is that he's just the best guy you could ever possibly meet. Incredibly humble, hardworking, all that stuff. Being a second-round pick, you don't walk in as a superstar. So everybody that I know that knows him well loves him, and it makes it sort of more delightful that all this stuff is happening.